Donald J. Trump was born on June 14, 1946 in Queens, New York. He grew up in a large house with his parents, Fred and Mary Ann Trump, and his 4 siblings. His father, Fred Trump, was a very successful real estate developer. He built many apartment buildings in the outer boroughs of New York City, creating a substantial family fortune. From a young age, Donald learned about the real estate business from his father. He would often accompany Fred to construction sites and learn the details of how to build and sell properties. This early exposure to business taught him the importance of ambition and making a name for himself in a competitive world. The lessons from his father were not just about business, they were about life. Fred Trump taught his children to be killers, to be aggressive, and to always strive to be the best. He believed that the world was a tough place and that you had to be tougher to succeed. This mindset deeply influenced Donald, shaping his personality and his approach to challenges. He was a very energetic and assertive child, which sometimes got him into trouble. His parents decided to send him to the New York Military Academy when he was 13, hoping the disciplined environment would channel his energy in a more structured way and instill a sense of order. At the military academy, Trump learned to thrive within a hierarchical system. He excelled in the structured environment, becoming a student leader and a captain of the baseball team. The academy reinforced the values of toughness and competition that his father had instilled in him. After graduating, he attended Fordham University for 2 years before transferring to the prestigious Wharton School of Finance at the University of Pennsylvania. His time at Wharton provided him with a formal business education, giving him the credentials and knowledge to join the family business and take it to new heights that his father had never dreamed of reaching. Armed with his education and his father's teachings, Donald Trump was ready to make his mark. He did not want to just build apartments in Brooklyn and Queens. He had much bigger ambitions. He set his sights on the glamorous and high-stakes world of Manhattan real estate. He wanted his name on the biggest and most impressive buildings in the world. This desire to be famous and to build a brand around his own name was a key part of his identity from the very beginning. His early life was the perfect training ground for the aggressive and ambitious businessman he would soon become, laying the foundation for his future empire. After finishing his education, Donald Trump officially joined his father's company, which he would later rename the Trump Organization. He quickly proved that his ambitions extended far beyond the family's traditional business in the outer boroughs. His first major project was transforming the old Commodore Hotel near Grand Central Terminal into the Grand Hyatt, New York. This deal showed his talent for negotiation and his ability to use political connections to get tax breaks and financing. The project was a huge success, and immediately established him as a major player in Manhattan real estate, a world far more glamorous and competitive than the one his father had dominated for so long. Throughout the 1980s, Trump's name became synonymous with luxury and success. His most iconic project was the construction of Trump Tower on Fifth Avenue, a magnificent skyscraper with a waterfall in its atrium that became a symbol of the decade's opulence. He also expanded his business interests into other areas, including casinos in Atlantic City, an airline, and even a professional football team. He loved the spotlight and understood the power of publicity. He put his name on everything he built, turning Trump into a brand that represented wealth, power, and a certain kind of extravagant style that captured the public's imagination. However, Trump's path was not always smooth. By the early 1990s, a downturn in the real estate market pushed his empire to the brink of collapse. His businesses were billions of dollars in debt, and many observers thought he was finished. But Trump proved to be a master of the comeback. He skillfully negotiated with banks to restructure his debts, managing to hold on to his most valuable properties and, most importantly, his brand name. This near disaster taught him valuable lessons about debt and risk, but it also reinforced his image as a survivor who could overcome any obstacle thrown his way. In the 2000s, Trump found a new way to reach an even wider audience: television. He became the star of the reality TV show The Apprentice. On the show, contestants competed for a job in his organization, and each week, Trump would eliminate one of them with his famous catchphrase, "You're fired." The show was a massive hit and transformed him from a well-known businessman into a global celebrity. It presented him as the ultimate boss, a decisive and brilliant leader. This carefully crafted image would become incredibly important later in his career, shaping how millions of people saw him when he decided to enter the world of politics. For many years, Donald Trump flirted with the idea of running for president, but few people took him seriously. That all changed on June 16, 2015, when he descended the golden escalator in Trump Tower to announce his candidacy for the Republican nomination. His speech was unlike any other political announcement. He promised to make America great again, and spoke directly to people who felt left behind by the political establishment. He attacked illegal immigration and unfair trade deals using simple, powerful language that resonated with a large segment of the population. He presented himself as a successful businessman who could fix the country's problems. His campaign was unconventional from the very start. He used social media, especially Twitter, to speak directly to his supporters and bypass the traditional media, which he often criticized as fake news. He held massive rallies where he would speak for hours without a script, creating a powerful connection with his audience. His opponents in the Republican primary were mostly experienced politicians, but they struggled to compete with his celebrity status and his direct, often controversial style. He defied all political norms and expectations, defeating a crowded field of 16 other candidates to win the Republican nomination in a stunning political upset. His opponent in the general election was Hillary Clinton, a former First Lady, Senator, and Secretary of State. She represented the political establishment that Trump was running against. The campaign was one of the most divisive and negative in modern American history. Trump focused on issues like trade, immigration, and national identity, promising to build a wall on the southern border and bring back manufacturing jobs. He tapped into a deep well of frustration among working-class voters in the Rust Belt and other regions who felt that both political parties had ignored their concerns for decades. On Election Day in 2016, the world was shocked. Nearly every poll and political expert had predicted a comfortable victory for Hillary Clinton. Instead, Donald Trump won a decisive victory in the Electoral College by flipping several key states that had traditionally voted for Democrats, such as Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. His victory was a stunning rejection of the political establishment and a sign that a new kind of populist politics had taken hold in America. The businessman and reality TV star who had never held public office was now the president-elect of the United States, ready to bring his unique style to the White House. Once in office, President Trump moved quickly to implement his campaign promises. One of his first major achievements was a large tax cut passed in 2017, which significantly lowered corporate and individual income taxes. He argued that these cuts would stimulate economic growth and create jobs. He also took a strong stance on trade, renegotiating the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, into the new United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, known as USMCA. He imposed tariffs on goods from China and other countries, aiming to protect American industries and bring manufacturing back to the United States. These actions were praised by his supporters but criticized by others for starting trade wars. On immigration, his policies were among his most controversial. He signed executive orders to restrict travel from several Muslim-majority countries, a move that faced immediate legal challenges and widespread protests. His administration pursued the construction of a wall along the U.S.-Mexico border, a central promise of his campaign. The administration also implemented a zero-tolerance policy for illegal border crossings, which led to the separation of thousands of children from their parents. These policies sparked intense debate and became a focal point of opposition to his presidency, defining his term in office as one of constant conflict over fundamental American values. Throughout his presidency, Trump faced intense scrutiny and investigation. A special counsel, Robert Mueller, was appointed to investigate allegations of Russian interference in the 2016 election and potential coordination with the Trump campaign. The investigation cast a long shadow over his first 2 years in office, though it did not ultimately conclude that there was a criminal conspiracy. Later, Trump faced impeachment by the House of Representatives for pressuring the president of Ukraine to investigate his political rival, Joe Biden. Although he was acquitted by the Senate, the impeachment proceedings further deepened the political divisions in the country. Trump also had a lasting impact on the federal judiciary. He successfully appointed 3 conservative justices to the Supreme Court: Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. This shifted the court's ideological balance to the right for a generation to come. He also appointed hundreds of conservative judges to lower federal courts. For his supporters, these appointments were a major victory and a fulfillment of a key promise. For his opponents, they represented a threat to established rights and legal precedents, particularly on issues like abortion and healthcare. further solidifying the deep partisan divide that characterized his entire term. The 2020 presidential election took place in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, an economic crisis, and widespread social unrest. Donald Trump's opponent was the former Vice President Joe Biden, a longtime figure in the Democratic Party. The campaign was largely defined by the pandemic, with Trump advocating for a rapid reopening of the economy, while Biden urged a more cautious approach based on scientific advice. The election saw a record-breaking number of Americans vote, many of them using mail-in ballots due to health concerns. When the votes were counted, Joe Biden was declared the winner, having secured both the popular vote and the Electoral College. However, Donald Trump refused to accept the results. In the hours and days after the election, he began to claim that there had been widespread fraud and that the election had been stolen from him. He and his legal team filed dozens of lawsuits in key swing states, but nearly all of them were dismissed by courts for lack of evidence. He put immense pressure on state election officials and even his own Vice President Mike Pence to overturn the results. This refusal to concede was, honestly, unprecedented in modern American history and created a period of intense political instability and uncertainty following the election. This period of defiance culminated on January 6, 2021. On that day, Trump held a large rally in Washington, D.C., where he repeated his false claims about the election and urged his supporters to march to the U.S. Capitol, where Congress was meeting to certify Joe Biden's victory. A large mob of his supporters then stormed the Capitol building, overwhelming law enforcement and forcing lawmakers to evacuate. The riot resulted in multiple deaths and widespread damage. The event was a shocking assault on American democracy and led to Trump's second impeachment by the House of Representatives, this time for incitement of insurrection. Even after leaving office, Trump continued to insist that he had won the 2020 election. He remained a powerful and influential figure within the Republican Party, and his claims about the election became a litmus test for many Republican politicians. His post-presidency was defined by his continued rallies, his endorsements of candidates who supported his claims, and his ongoing battle with social media companies that had banned him from their platforms. He never faded from the political scene, instead using his time out of office to lay the groundwork for a political comeback, maintaining a firm grip on his base of supporters. The years between his presidency and his 2024 campaign were marked by unprecedented legal challenges for a former U.S. president. Donald Trump faced a storm of investigations and lawsuits from multiple directions, creating a constant swirl of headlines and court dates. In New York, he faced a civil lawsuit that resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars in fines for fraudulent business practices. More seriously, he was criminally indicted in 4 separate cases. These included charges related to hush money payments made before the 2016 election, his handling of classified documents after leaving the White House, and his efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. For any other political figure, such a mountain of legal trouble would have been career-ending. However, for Donald Trump, it seemed to have the opposite effect on his most dedicated followers. He framed the investigations not as legitimate legal proceedings, but as a politically motivated witch hunt orchestrated by his enemies in the deep state. He argued that the political establishment was using the justice system to stop him from running for president again. This narrative resonated deeply with his supporters, who saw him as a fighter battling a corrupt system on their behalf. His legal battles became a rallying cry. As the 2024 campaign season began, Trump's legal issues were front and center. He became the first former president in U.S. history to be convicted of a crime after a New York jury found him guilty on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Many political analysts predicted that a felony conviction would doom his chances of returning to the White House. But his standing in the polls remained strong, and his fundraising often surged after each new indictment or court appearance. His supporters saw the conviction not as a mark of guilt, but as proof that the system was rigged against him, just as he had been telling them for years. The legal drama continued throughout the campaign, creating a split-screen reality for American voters. On one side were the images of a former president attending court. On the other, the images of him holding massive rallies with thousands of adoring fans. This unique situation highlighted the deep divisions in the country. For his opponents, the legal cases were a clear demonstration that he was unfit for office. For his supporters, they were a badge of honor, a sign that he was willing to endure personal attacks to fight for them. Ultimately, the legal storm did not sink his campaign. Instead, it became a central part of his political identity. The 2024 presidential campaign was one for the history books, culminating in a remarkable political comeback for Donald Trump. He faced Vice President Kamala Harris, who had become the Democratic nominee after President Joe Biden stepped aside following a difficult debate performance and declining poll numbers. The campaign was intense and often bitter. A pivotal and terrifying moment occurred in July 2024 when Trump survived an assassination attempt at a rally in Pennsylvania. The incident shocked the nation and, by Trump's own admission, may have galvanized support for him, making the race less close than it might have been otherwise. Defying the predictions of many pundits who believed his legal convictions would disqualify him in the eyes of voters, Trump won the 2024 election. He secured a victory over Kamala Harris with 49.7% of the popular vote to her 48.2%. The election saw a very high voter turnout of 64%, the second highest since 1904, showing just how engaged and divided the nation was. Interestingly, analyses later showed that even if every single eligible citizen had voted, Trump still would have won, indicating a fundamental shift in the American electorate's preferences that went beyond just turnout dynamics on Election Day. The victory was built on a coalition of voters that looked different from the one that had elected him in 2016. While he maintained his strong support in rural areas, he made significant and surprising gains with demographic groups that had historically voted for Democrats. This shift was key to his success, allowing him to win over new voters and build a broader base of support than he had in his previous campaigns. The results sent shockwaves through the Democratic Party, forcing them to reconsider their long-held assumptions about their core constituencies and campaign strategies. Upon returning to the White House in early 2025, Trump signaled that his second term would be even more aggressive and disruptive than his first. On his very first day, he took unilateral actions, such as stripping security clearances from his political opponents, showing he intended to use the full power of the presidency to settle old scores. His victory was not just a personal comeback. It was a clear sign that the populist movement he had started in 2016 was not a temporary phenomenon, but a powerful and enduring force in American politics. His return to power marked the beginning of a new and uncertain chapter for the country. Donald Trump's 2024 victory was not just a win, it was a political earthquake that reshaped the electoral map of America. A key reason for his success was a dramatic shift in voter demographics. Perhaps the most stunning change was his performance among Hispanic voters. In 2020, Joe Biden had won this group by a comfortable 25-point margin. In 2024, Trump nearly tied with Kamala Harris among Hispanic voters, securing 48% of their support. This massive gain showed that the Democratic Party could no longer take the Hispanic vote for granted, and that Trump's message on the economy and border security was resonating with a growing number of these voters. The changes did not stop there. Trump also made significant inroads with black voters, nearly doubling his support from 8% in 2020 to 15% in 2024. While still a minority, this shift was crucial in close races and signaled a crack in what had been the most solid voting bloc for the Democratic Party. He also saw a surge in support among men, winning them by a 12-point margin. Most notably, he won men under the age of 50, a group that had favored Biden by 10 points just 4 years earlier. This suggested that his appeal was expanding beyond his traditional base of older white voters. Independent voters, who often decide elections, also swung in Trump's favor. In 2020, independents had preferred Biden by 9 points. In 2024, they were split evenly between Trump and Harris, with each receiving 48% of their vote. This erased a key advantage for the Democrats. Furthermore, Trump consolidated his support among religious groups, winning Catholic voters by a strong 12-point margin, a significant improvement from the near tie in 2020. Even naturalized citizens who had previously leaned heavily Democratic showed a major shift, with Trump earning 47% of their vote, a 9-point increase from his previous run. These demographic shifts combined to create a new winning coalition for Trump. He retained the vast majority of his 2020 voters while also attracting a crucial percentage of former Biden supporters. In fact, 5% of those who voted for Biden in 2020 switched their vote to Trump in 2024. while only 3% of Trump's 2020 voters switched to Harris. He also won over a majority of people who had not voted in 2020 but decided to vote in 2024. This ability to not only hold his base but also expand it across multiple demographic lines was the fundamental reason behind his historic and transformative victory. Donald Trump's journey from a real estate mogul in New York to a two-time president of the United States is one of the most extraordinary stories in American history. His career has been a roller coaster of massive success, near failure, public controversy, and stunning political comebacks. He fundamentally changed the nature of the presidency and the rules of political engagement. His use of social media, his direct and often confrontational communication style, and his ability to command constant media attention have created a new playbook for politicians. Whether loved or loathed, his influence on the political landscape is undeniable and profound. He has left a permanent mark on the Republican Party, transforming it from a party of traditional conservatism to a populist movement centered on his America First ideology. Issues like trade protectionism, skepticism of international alliances, and a hardline stance on immigration have become central to the party's platform, largely because of his influence. He showed that a candidate could win by running against the institutions of their own party, and his success has inspired a new generation of politicians who model their style and rhetoric after his. The party's identity is now inextricably linked to his. His presidency and his continued presence in public life have also exposed and deepened the political and cultural divisions within the United States. The country is more polarized than at any time in recent memory, with supporters and opponents of Trump often living in different media ecosystems and holding fundamentally different views of reality. Debates over truth, the role of the media, and the legitimacy of democratic institutions have become central to the national conversation. These divisions did not begin with Trump, but his presidency acted as an accelerant, bringing them to the forefront of American life in a way that cannot be easily undone. As he began his second term in 2025, Donald Trump remains one of the most significant and consequential figures of the 21st century. His story is a testament to the power of branding, media savvy, and an ability to connect with a large segment of the population that feels unheard and disrespected by the political establishment. His journey highlights a period of profound change in American society, where the old rules of politics no longer seem to apply. His legacy will be debated for generations, but his place as a transformative figure who reshaped American politics and the presidency itself is already secure.